We are rolling in, this is 3. This is draft 3 of our look at the prison system in the United States and whether we lock up too many prisoners or not. Here on November 2nd, 2017. What were you for Halloween?
A starving student.
Starving student. Very nice. And we're about to hear from Jared Jones, who's going to tell us what he thinks about this question. Rock and roll.
Hi, my name is Jared.
Hi, Jared.
Today I'm going to be discussing the topic that the United States locks up too many prisoners. So I'm going to skip most of my definitions in the resolutional analysis besides the one too many. For the purpose of this brief, I'll argue that the term too many defines the amount past intended prison capacity where such excess infringes on the basic human rights of the individual. So what is the problem? The majority of prisons are overcrowded. In a 2014 Contemporary Justice Review article, James Pitts references research done by S.Y. Chung, which states that as many as 33 states have operated at 100% capacity or higher.
Good.
As examined in the 2017 Denver Law Review, as of 2013, there were nearly 8 million adults and youth behind bars or within the probation and parole systems in the United States. In other words, 1 in 40 U.S. residents was either in prison, in jail, on probation or parole, or otherwise under control of the justice system. Now, why is that the problem? Overcrowding infringes on the human rights of the prisoners. We can debate which rights a prisoner ought to deserve, but I find it hard to believe that any reasonable person would argue that prisoners deserve less than basic human rights. According to the American Civil Liberties Union, quote, the United States is the only democracy in the world that has no independent authority to monitor prison conditions and enforce minimal standards of health and safety. How big is the problem? Not only are incarcerated citizens deprived of their ability to contribute to society, but their absence weakens the families from the communities they come from. As the weakness becomes more prominent, members of these families become more prone to falling into the generational cycle of repeated incarceration. Angie J. Smith writes in a 2014 research report about chronic PTSD sustained by the family members of prisoners, stating that, quote, when a parent is incarcerated, it has lasting social, emotional, and developmental impacts that manifest in economic strain, socialization, and attachment issues, stigmatization from peers and other adults, and traumatic stress. Overcrowding can have destructive effects on psychological and behavioral well-being and influences the emotional and contextual factors that predispose a prisoner to suicidal behavior or deprivation mentality. And that's taken from Hans Wolff in the International Journal of Prisoner Health in 2016. Overcrowding has historically incentivized correctional institutions to begin privatizing prisons. Private prisons have incentive to forego rehabilitating criminals and reducing recidivism. In his 2015 textbook on criminal justice, Jeffrey H. Ryman describes the nature of private prisons, stating that, quote, it is worth noting that private prisons and elements of the larger criminal justice industrial complex make money from the system as it is. They have a vested interest in more of the same and actively lobby to defeat reforms that will reduce their revenue. He goes on to quantify the drastic increase in private prison inmates, stating that in the 10 years from 1985 to 1995, the number of prison beds under private management grew roughly 7,000%. So why do we have the problem? Mandatory minimum sentencing laws cause a majority of prison overcrowding. James Pitts discussed the role that sentencing procedures have on prison population, writing that perhaps the most direct influence on prison admissions comes from the court's determinate sentencing procedures that remove judicial discretion in sentencing length for inmates. Not only did the states lack the infrastructure which led to the overcrowding, but underfunding and a dearth of new prison construction did not allow states to keep pace with a constantly increasing flow of inmates. Another cause of the problem would be the school-to-prison pipeline. Working in conjunction with the tough on crime policy, the school-to-prison pipeline, as described in the 2015 Arkansas Law Review, as the phenomenon where school administrators and teachers push out children from the school systems by placing them on out-of-school suspension, transferring them to alternative schools, expelling them, and or having them arrested for minor offenses. Having been segregated from the larger body of students, it's no small wonder that many of these students will encounter some form of contact with the justice system. So what is the solution? The solution is comprised of 3 primary dimensions: preventing mass incarceration, reducing recidivism, and reducing the sentencing for inmates convicted of less serious crimes. So repealing the mandatory minimum sentencing. For the end of the fiscal year in 2012, of the 181,964 inmates in federal prison, roughly 52% of them were convicted with drug-related offenses, their most serious offense, and that's taken from the Bureau of Justice Statistics in 2015. So for drug-related offense, rehabilitation would prove more effective than incarcerating these individuals for an arbitrary amount of time. Will the solution work? In a 2014 study in the Psychiatry, Psychology, and Law Journal, Sharon Casey explains her findings regarding drug rehabilitation and its effect on recidivism, explaining that the overall combined effect was significant and showed a reduction in reoffending of 29%.
That's time. I now stand open for cross-examination and points of clarification.
I now stand open for cross-examination and points of clarification.
Name?
Randy.
Randy?
Brandon.
Brandon. Hi, Brandon. Rock and roll, Brandon.
You stated
Dave's
that,
not getting any younger. Stand closer.
you stated that there's the certain prison population is around, I think you said 180,000 were drug-related offenses. Would you mind telling me what were those drug-related offenses? Was it dealing or smoking?
Actually, that statistic encompasses all of them: trafficking, drug, or conspiracy. So that creates the entire number.
Okay. I would say, you say that overcrowding has a sociological effect, mental effect on some of the prisoners being locked up. Would you say that it's the overcrowding, or would you do to the social fact that they're taken away from society?
So the study was regarding PTSD in the family, and then I also touched on the effects of overcrowding, and that was taken from... Okay, all right.
What are the basic human rights since they have good?
Thank you very much. Okay, let me give Jared some feedback. You needed better time allocation. I like your approach on overcrowding. You made a strong case for the private prisons. You spent too much time on it, however. Mandatory minimums was a given. You had a new part of the conversation with the school to prison population. I'll buy it for a second. Some of these kids don't belong in the classroom, and there's nothing that you can do about this. And you didn't present any solution to the state, as you put it, the school to prison pipeline in your solution. So we're left out there with what you tell us is a big part of the problem still in existence. So you needed to, in your solution, revoke mandatory minimums. You need to go right down the case, get rid of private prisons or cut them way back, and go through part of your problems thing for your solution. See, and then you can go into your novel things of your drug treatments and other stuff like that. If you had more time, you could have presented the advantages to your proposal. Other than that, I like some of your novel argumentation. Nice job. Okay, next, on deck. Who's on deck? Elizabeth, get up there. Who's cross-exing? You're Elizabeth, right? Who's cross-exing Elizabeth? You are. Okay, go up there. Get up there. And Yoon, or Young? You'll cross-ex Young again? Okay.
No, this is probably the last one.
Lab 42.
Or 42? Okay, we get Young. We can do Young. Is Wah somebody else, or Young Wah? Is Wah somebody? Your name is Wah? Young Wah. Oh, Young Wah. Oh. So we have two more. Can you come to the conference room? Or do you have you can come to, how about Nahi?
I actually have a class after this. Is there like
Can you go now then? Can you come at the conference room?
Yeah.
Okay, you go
I have to
now.
take South Campus by 4:30.
Yeah, you're fine. You can go first. We solved the problem solved. Oh, by the way, since we're running out of time, last time I hope to see you all on Tuesday night at 6:30 for all that extra credit you're going to earn seeing Dr. Brian Boxer Walker and there's good food being served so you can have good eats. That's at the faculty center. No, it's not formal, it's informal.
Professor, we also need to see that eye doctor that just today.
Yeah, he's an eye doctor.
The eye doctor on November 7th.
Yeah, he's the eye doctor.
Okay.
So, I'd like to see you all there. Go, start.
Hi, my name is Nahi. I will be taking
Oh,
the
Nahi, I don't have your brief.
Oh, shoot. Can you, it's
You
like,
hand it over? I have Elizabeth's brief. Who's Elizabeth?
it should say, like, prison. Yeah.
Rock and roll.
Hi, my name is Nahi. I'll be taking the
Hi, Nahi.
Hi, I'll be taking the affirmative stance for the policy topic that the United States locks up too many prisoners. The problem is that incarcerations in the U.S. has been escalating rapidly for the past few decades. America is a nation that prides itself as a land of freedom, opportunity, and liberty, but it locks up too many prisoners for too long. According to a 2016 report by the Council of Economic Advisors on Incarceration, as of April 2016, the incarcerated population is 4.5 times larger than 1980, with approximately 2.2 million people behind bars. Another aspect of this problem is that maintaining and operating criminal infrastructure is expensive. The high cost puts budgetary pressures on the U.S. government, and in fact, prisons are classified as the costliest criminal justice sanctions that states employ, averaging over $30,000 in total taxpayer costs per offender per year, according to an International Journal of Evidence-Based Research, Policy, and Practice in 2015. The problem is huge. It's so severe in many states that prison populations have exceeded the intended capacity of facilities. For example, California prison population stands at 179.5% of design capacity, requiring a further reduction of 33,000 inmates in a March 2016 policy essay in the Criminology and Public Policy Journal. When overcrowding pervades prisons, there's major consequences: water and sewage system failures, harmful conditions that probe suicide, violence, mental health care. Furthermore, having too many convicts locked up in jails causes lasting social impacts on their inmates, their families, and their communities. In particular, incarceration disproportionately affects blacks and Hispanics, who comprise over 50% of the incarcerated population. In addition, 65% of these prisoners have not completed high school, so lack of access to education has adverse effects on poor, marginalized communities and underscores socioeconomic inequality in the current criminal justice system. What is the root of the problem? The problem exists because of longer sentences, high recidivism rates, and stricter sentencing laws that incarcerate more nonviolent and petty crimes. Conservative politics and cries for public safety created new tough-on-crime legislators that increase average sentence lengths. We have mandatory minimums, elimination of good time credits, over-criminalizations, all of these collectively contributing to the historically high levels of imprisonment. According to Criminal Justice Facts article by the Sentencing Project in 2015, the National Research Council reported that half of the 222% growth in the state prison population between 1980 and 2010 was due to an increase of time served in the prison for all offenses. These stricter laws also adversely affect first-time drug offenders. In fact, according to the U.S. Department of Justice Bureau of Justice Statistics in 2016, almost 50%, or 92,000 prisoners of sentenced federal prisoners in September of 2015 were serving time for drug offenses rather than violent crimes. In addition to these harsher laws, there are high recidivism rates. As seen by the Bureau of Justice Statistics, an article in 2014, among state prisoners released in 30 states in 2005, about 2/3 of released prisoners were arrested for a new crime just within 3 years. Simply locking up these felons in prison are not going to fix the long-term problems of crime. Reform is necessary to prevent a cycle of repeated offenses, lengthened sentences, and rise of unfair criminalization. The solution? First, the United States should eliminate mandatory minimum sentences and cut back on these lengthy sentences. Mandatory minimum sentences have not efficiently reduced crime. The policy merely shifted the discretion from judges to prosecutors, removing the opportunity to subjectively consider individual circumstances for appropriate punishment. Also, America should categorize drug and property offenses from felonies to misdemeanors, reserving the prisons for the worst offenders of violent crime. In a May 2017 article by The Economist, 22,000 federal drug offenders were sentenced to in the fiscal year of 2014. Of the 22,000 federal drug offenders, less than 1% committed acts of violence. These drug offenders are in prison for nonviolence, and there needs to be a clear separation between minor offenders and hardened criminals, rather than incarcerating every single offender. Instead, the government should invest in the police and focus on treatment, educational rehabilitation programs that will reduce sentences and help integrate felons back into society. Rehabilitation programs such as ACT, or acceptance and commitment therapy, was able to reduce drug use by over 40% and improve mental health by 26.4% in post-treatment in a 2014 study by 2 psychologists. Also, we can expand resources for police, which has consistently been shown to reduce crime. The solution will work. Reducing incarceration and nonviolent crime will drastically reduce the prison population, and rehabilitation programs can provide positive clinical change at an emotional level and a cognitive level. Finally, the solution is cost-effective. Prisons are marginally effective at best, and large-scale reform of imprisonment is possible and viable without adding extra threat to endanger the public safety. The proposal is advantageous. Rehabilitation programs and police investing in the police can save money from reducing prison expenditure and can also eliminate the problem of hyper-overcrowding from mass incarceration. After considering both pros and cons, the solution's benefits outweigh the cons.
Thank you very much. Let's have a quick cross-ex and call it a day for this part of our class. Quickly, who's cross-exing you? Let's have Gil. Gil to the rescue! Hey, Gil. Let's hear for Gil. Okay, stand close, Gil. Pretend you like her. Very good. Yeah. Good. Yeah. Okay. Good.
Okay.
Yeah. Look at me, Gil, not her. Yeah.
Excuse me.
There you go. Good. Go.
Okay, you brought up the point that most of the people that are incarcerated do not have education, I believe. And do you think that one of the requirements for releasing them is to have them acquire a high school degree? Do you think that that would be a positive thing?
I think it's a bit too hasty to say we have to require a high school education, but the truth is that statistically, many of these federal prisoners do not have access to education. Many of them have not acquired high school, like a basic degree and like a diploma from high school, and because they don't have access to education, it means they're generally more poor or marginalized. They're just living in marginalized communities. And
Okay, thank you, Gil. I think to give you quick feedback, Nahi, right? Knee-high or Nahi?
Nahi.
Nahi. Yeah, I think Gil's point was sort of well taken in that without a high school diploma or some kind of training, you're kind of a fish out of water out there. And you were kind of advocating releasing some of these uneducated people. I really liked your brief. I thought it was good. I liked your research. I liked the way you spent your time covering things. My only suggestion is please read some of your citations ahead of reading the quote so we know the date and where they came from. For the most part, you must have read my mind because you changed and started reading some of the citations ahead of the quotes that you were giving, so that was better. So we knew how to evaluate them. Yeah, and so I really liked your proposal. I guess was pretty close to isolating most of the problems, not all of the problems you isolated. So it was a very good job. Nahi, thank you. Okay. For those left, Elizabeth and Jung, right?
Are we turning in the midterms?
Are you turning in the midterm? Yes, turn in your midterm. Next week. Yeah, next week. It's due next week. Yeah. Yeah, thank you.